Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome. Today, I'm going to introduce briefly my new course on Heidegger on technology. This is the second course on technology in Heidegger that I will teach. This time, we're going to have, I think, a bit of a different format than usually. We're going to have a very intense course. So originally I had planned to have this course over 6 weeks, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to have 6 seminars in total, yes, but over 3 weekends, really. So I'm going to introduce the good old continental block seminar. So we're going to start mid-October, Saturday and Sunday. We'll focus on the question concerning technology. We'll just focus in on this one text, which is the foundation for everything to do with technology in Heidegger. We'll also consider his essay, or his talk rather, The Danger, die Gefahr. Oh, and by the way, if you're interested, there's now Halcyon merch. So just follow the link and get your T-shirt or whatever you want to have. And see the sun rising behind the Alps. So the idea of the course is that it's an introduction not just to Heidegger's notion of Gestell and framing, etc., and also to his thought of the Seinsgeschichte, history of being, and of the Ereignis, which is what you need to understand his quote-unquote philosophy of technology, really. We're also going to go a bit beyond just the question concerning technology. We're going to look at a text that's usually not considered in that area, but it is part of Heidegger's concern with technology, which is his conversation with a Japanese. Because in it, Heidegger warns of the film and also how language is traveling and is homogenizing the world. By the way, if you have a question on the course, let me know. And so this is going to be the next block, will be that text, which also anyone interested in Heidegger and the Kyoto school, our discussion will, of course, also then go in that direction. And also what Heidegger in this conversation says is that the world is being Europeanized. So there's a kind of colonization that's happening at the same time as Europe forgets itself. And we'll then move on, we'll have other texts we'll consider, we'll then move on to the turn, die Kehre, where Heidegger proposes what a free relationship with technology, with techniques might look like. And throughout the entire course, I'm going to provide different translations for some of the foundational terms. Let's just begin with the most obvious one. Heidegger nowhere speaks of the essence of technology. He does not say die Essenz der Technik. He does not say, he's not after the essentia of technological things. He's after das Wesen der Technik, understood as the tempo-spatial realm, the dominion of techniques, not of things that are technological, not the iPhone, not airplanes, etc. No, not the camera, not the nuclear bomb, even though all of those factor in. No, he's after what? He's after how beings now appear. Being for Heidegger is the way of appearing of beings. So we have to be very precise with the translations. And if you're reading this in English translation, you'll be I think what you'll see when you come at it more from the German, even reading this in the translation, you'll begin to see this differently. than you would have ever perhaps been able to see it, because we have to. Heidegger explicitly says in the question concerning technology, I do not mean Wesen as Essentia. And then the English translator comes along and says, well, then let's just translate Wesen as essence, and never question it ever again. So we have to consider different ways of saying what Heidegger is saying in German in the English language. It's not about translating in terms of trying to find what's correct in a dictionary, but we have to be able to say in a different language what that language can say within its word hoard, to use this old term, within its word treasure. And so I think that's going to be one of the most important aspects of this course, is trying to be able to think through Heidegger's thought in English. So thinking it again, but in English. And hence opening up those dimensions that are usually lost because, due to extremely poor standardized translations that unfortunately are part of the canon inside academia. So what I would like you to do now is, if you're interested, is to download and I think we're going to start on the weekend of the 18th and 19th of October, Saturday and Sunday. So that'll be the first block on the question concerning technology. And after that, we'll move on to the other texts, the conversation with the Japanese, and also the turn. We'll also look at the danger and science and reflection, Wissenschaft und Besinnung, or rather science and mindfulness is perhaps better. And also, of course, the letter on humanism. So what we probably will end up discussing is transhumanism and AI. Now, why is it that AI, of course, is basically attacking language? And so that's going to be one really important question. And I think doing it intensely, because I've done intense weekend seminars in the past, one on Baudrillard, simulacra and simulation, just recently, earlier this year, one on the futurist manifestos in February, and last year, one on my course, the intellectual life reimagined for the 21st century, which in my memory, now there's always something to be said for having very long courses. So this year we had a 10 or 11 week course on Goethe's Faust Part 1. But sometimes I sense that an increased intensity can actually ignite something with the student and with the teacher. One of the most important seminars I ever attended was a seminar on Kantian and Hegelian logic in Vienna by Professor Max Gottschlich. It was about 9 years ago now. And that opened up German idealism to me in a manner that no other course has done. So, especially because we're discussing technology, it's not about going through these texts quickly. We'll still be taking a lot of time. We'll be taking, seminars will be 2 or 3 hours long each. And we'll just focus in on a few texts, 3 in total as the main texts with other texts around them. So 3 texts, 6 seminars, plus then we'll have you, we'll allow you to present something in the end. So maybe there'll be 7. But that we'll figure that one out in the end. If you don't have time, obviously, for the seminars, then you'll just there will be pre-recorded lectures, 4 or 6 of them or so. And by the way, I'm in Bergamo next week to give a lecture on Heidegger. It's the title is Asking Heidegger's Question of Technology Again. which is not intended to regurgitate what Heidegger is saying in the question concerning technology, but to ask this question again and see how much Gestell has shifted and what Gestell is now after. Because I believe that Gestell is really, if you want to even use this term anymore, what technics is now after is not so much the letting beings appear only as meaningful insofar as they are a standing resource, but to let them appear as, well, to let them disappear and to bring forth a mere mirage, as a simulacrum. I think that is very much what everything is hurling towards. Heidegger does begin to see this at some point with cybernetics, etc. But even cybernetics is just, it's a manipulation game of signals to ensure that there's a closed circuit that can be controlled. It's a control grid. But the metaverse, to use this term, that's taking it a bit further. So that talk will be I'll give, if you happen to be in Bergamo, do come by. And then in Bergamo, actually, I'll record all the lectures, and my friend Francesco Catania will also present a lecture on physis in Heidegger, which is also something that we'll discuss. Physis, so Earth, to use Heidegger's term, how he will come to think of physis or of nature in his terminology. So that will be a part of it also. But we want to understand. So it's ultimately an introduction to Heidegger's later philosophy, if you want to think of the course in this manner. By the way, if you have a question, let me know, and I'll put your question in the chat. If you're watching this on YouTube, then I can see this, and I'll just respond to you. And if you download the syllabus and give us your, email, then we can email you when we open enrollment in a couple of weeks. So the idea is to think through what Heidegger sees as the realm of techniques and what it does and why it seems to be exclusive and absolute in this time. But we also want to understand why and how Gestell is a finite occurrence, a finite dimension also of being, and also an epoch that will come to pass, and what it is so that Heidegger means with, because often Heidegger is blamed as sort of a quietist. There's nothing much you can do, just relaxed, etc. But in fact, he does guide us to what a free relationship with technology might look like. But first, what we have to make is an experience with what it is and how it unfolds. And what it is also already tempo spatial and historically conditioned. So we're going to, if you're interested in Heidegger's Seinsgeschichte, the history of being, as poor translation, but we'll just use it for now, and his thinking of the Ereignis, the Enauning, again very poorly translated as the event, so we're not going to say this. But the Enauning, the Ereignis, which he explicitly refers to as the realm in which being and human beings encounter each other. And as he says himself in his essay on the identity, on the principle of identity, der Satz der Identität, Heidegger explicitly says that Ereignis, like Logos and the Tao, cannot be translated. Now, it's quite striking that Stambau, I think was her name, the translator, omitted that entire passage in her translation. Isn't that convenient? So There are many, many such things that you encounter when you read Heidegger in translation, where very often things are either omitted or just brushed over um, for whatever reason. And so again, it it ultimately all comes down to language and how we say something. This is not because language isn't arbitrary. It's not wrong when let's just put it perhaps in a way that people can understand. Um, an ideology is a worldview that informs how you see the world and how you act in the world. And it is, in fact, the case that words do uh, do have consequences, and at some point will lead to action. So the way in which you think through what I really want for people to get out of this is that you will begin to see the operations of Gestell everywhere. And even if it just means that you begin to see that the way we look at the way we consider food, the way we do sports, the way we think of our health is all ultimately structured by the operations and the demands of Gestell. So if you're new here and you have never taken a course, I would, with Halcyon, and just to say this again, do get the merch. Just head over to the halcyonguild.org website and download the syllabus. Give us your email address, and we'll email you in a couple of weeks when we open early enrollment. The first block seminar will be on the 18th and the 19th of October. There will probably be 4 to 6 video lectures pre-recorded. And so the idea is that you read the texts first, then you listen to the lecture, and then you come into the seminars. Those will be recorded. So we'll make good use of technological tools. So you can listen back to them, but you also, of course, take handwritten notes as you're going through these texts. So in a high intensity mode, over the course of 3 weeks, we're going to have 6 seminars focusing in on 3 main texts with references to other texts by Heidegger. And again, I just mentioned this again, if you're interested in the Kyoto school, as we're reading this dialogue between Heidegger and a Japanese visitor, we're also going to touch on the Kyoto school and Heidegger's relationship with the Far East, and also this experience of this encounter between the Occident and the Far East. As he often refers to, this is one of the main tasks. If you're interested, there's a conversation between Heidegger and a Buddhist monk from, I think, Vietnam, which you should be able to find on YouTube. And there should be subtitles, English subtitles, with this video interview as well, which I think was recorded in the 1960s. So again, this, if you head over, the link is in the chat. So download the syllabus. If you have a question, let me know now. I'm leaving soon, so let me know of any questions that you have on this course, or maybe even just more broadly speaking on Heidegger, on technology, and I'll be happy to answer them. Another text that we could consider if people are interested in the seminars is his essay on releasement, which is also part of my course on leisure with dignity. So if you enroll in that course, then you can listen to the lecture on Heidegger on releasement, which is quite long and goes in depth on that essay, what Heidegger, which is one of the ways in which to respond to techniques. But always the first step is to see Gestell, is to see Enframing, is to see it for how it unfolds and how its operations are um, well, ubiquitous everywhere, and that is always the first step, because, as he points out, technology isn't neutral, and it isn't instrumental purely, and it isn't anthropological either. So it's not just how we use certain things. Let's use nuclear energy for peace. Um, that's beyond the point. It is ultimately, let's say, a way in which being occurs in this epoch is through Gestell. Is and this lets beings appear as meaningful only if they stand ready for immediate use, including the human being. And the human being is in this peculiar position to of being at once resource but also enforcer and of the demands of Gestell. So we are, as Heidegger says, in the turn, in die Kehre, or the turning, the plaything of technology. And how to reverse that relationship so that there can be a free relationship with techniques. That is the question. That will be the guiding question of this course. So again, if you have a question, put the question in the chat now, then I'll get to it in the end. Because I'm leaving in about 5 minutes. So the idea really is that you will be able to perhaps see the operations of Gestell in your daily life, in your existence, and at the same time you'll be able to, we'll try and articulate what a free relationship with technology really might look like, or what. Then of course you have to ask the question, well, what is freedom for Heidegger? What is freedom, perhaps more broadly speaking? It's not to do so much with free will. Well, one way in which Gestell operates is telling you that you don't have free will, and look at those brain scans where you can see neurons shooting before you act, and hence you're not free. That's Gestell operating. That's a purely Gestell and framing, the manner of that's in the manner of enframing an understanding of freedom or unfreedom. So that's in a way sort of self enslavement of man, and it all has to do really with also with Plato's cave. Again, we'll probably touch on that as well. So the idea is that we'll focus on three main texts and take a lot of time discussing them in great detail. First in the lectures that will be pre-recorded, and then also in the seminars. And if you download the syllabus now, then I'll be able to reach out to you in time before we open enrollment. Last time, the course filled quite quickly, which was almost 4 years ago now. So we're finite beings, so I can only ever teach one course at a time. But I think, given how rapidly AI is spreading, and there's this strange openness by some to use ChatGPT as an ersatz friend or therapist, etc. So we also have to wonder and ponder, or be shocked by why there is this openness to this sort of technology, and also why it's being used in a manner that we use it, or that some people perhaps use it, which again has to do with, which is a question of the epoch and not a question of the specific technology. You have to wonder, what's the self-understanding of man here, and also who it is that we might become. Heidegger says somewhere in one of his writings on language, by the way, that we are at a crossroads where we either become the Homo humanus, that's in the letter on humanism, or we become a monstrosity disfigured by our acceptance of the machine world, or the machine unworld, I would say. Brain chipped cyborgs, part owned by whichever corporation has transplanted its brain chip into your brain. Suicide potted in the end. And taken out of the equation, another way in which Gestell operates is to make operational death, and hence crowd out death. But we're also going to look at not just Heidegger, of course. We do need to consider, for example, Aristotle's or Aristotelian causality. So we're going to look at that as well, which is a major part of the question concerning technology and how to retrieve so-called causality and also this reduced manner in which we understand causality today as cause-effect relationships without an ultimate telos. Here's a question by Nicholas Cloud. Will we talk about the strange phenomenon of people becoming intimately attached to technology that mimics human features behavior? Yes, so I just mentioned this before. That there is this rather peculiar openness to, and I just, we can use LLMs for certain things, and one can use picture generation, etc. But there's something different. So I wouldn't even say that it mimics. It's aping. It's not imitation, because to a certain degree, techne, as Aristotle says, techne imitates physis, and that's when it's strong. That's when it's good. That's when it's healthy. Imitatio naturae, the imitation of nature, is what allows for die bildenden Künste, and for literature. But what this does is copying, is aping, in some sense, faking or simulating. So we are going to go in the direction of the simulacrum, very much so. And also why there is this openness to that, but also in how far, and this is going beyond Heidegger, in how far this is a parasitical movement, let's say. And what I also want to make very strong, though, especially in the lectures, is that we always need to have the philosophical tradition present to be able to read a thinker like Heidegger. So you don't, as a student, have to have that, but I, as the teacher, have to have it present, and will also make you aware what it is that Heidegger is addressing here, even if he may not make it explicit. Thank you for the question, Nicholas. Very good question. If there are any more questions, please raise the question now. If not, I'll just disappear into the good night very soon, at least for a while. And do download the syllabus. the link to which you find in the description of this video. And thank you very much, Harris, I see this now, for gifting 5 memberships. As always, very generous of you. And I hope that many of you who have been gifted the memberships actually stay on as members and help support the work on this channel in this manner. If you are listening to this and you do want to become a member, do so. You can also leave a super chat or super thanks, whatever they call it, on YouTube. That all helps. And do share this video with anyone who's interested in technology and the philosophy of technology, in Heidegger's philosophy of technology, and in Heidegger's thinking more broadly. And do download the syllabus. So again, thank you so much, Harris. I hope you can make it to the course as well. And yeah, in the meantime, as I'm now going to disappear, download the syllabus, get ready. It's going to be intense weekends that we're going to enjoy beginning mid-October. We are opening early enrollment very soon, maybe in a week or 2 weeks from now. I haven't decided yet, but we'll figure that one out. Anyways, thank you. Good night.